What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks to everybody that subscribes, follows along, watches the videos. As always, this video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals, Bikinis, and Bio Longevity Labs. Check the description box so that you can get a discount at all of those sponsors. Coming back with another Q&A. I'll be honest, I'm at a little bit of a writer's block, even though I'm not an author. Um, Now that the Rebound series is over, I haven't come across a good replacement form of content. So I'm doing these solo Q&As. Um, Josh Austin and myself do the podcast every week. I would like to have a third piece of content or third video format in the rotation. So if you guys have any ideas, if there's things that you'd specifically like to see, let me know. Leave a comment. So I'm going to just dive right into the questions here. This one was interesting. So I had somebody write in and say, "What do you think would happen if elite level athletes like Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson chose bodybuilding over football? Do you think they'd become elite level pros?" I always love this thought experiment. This guy, for context, played Division I college football at the University of Miami, I believe. And he said that he was just surrounded by guys that were absolute freaks that would eat like chicken fingers and fries for breakfast and roll out of bed and squat 600 pounds and look like just total freaks. So it's funny because I was recently visiting my parents. My whole family, we are diehard Giants fans. While I was there, we were watching the Giants play the Eagles. And so Saquon is obviously now on the Eagles. And even when he was with the Giants, I used to say for years, he was the perfect example. I've said it a million times over again. If this dude would have chose bodybuilding and dedicated his life to bodybuilding the same way that he did for football, maybe even more so because bodybuilding is kind of 24/7. I absolutely think that someone like him would be not only top level pros, but there's a very good chance that they would be. I don't want to go out on a limb and say that they would be Mr. Olympia because that's like, once in a generation type of person, but they would be like pro show winners. I think it's very likely that guys like Saquon or Bijan Robinson, guys like this, it's very likely that you would see them look similar to like a Tony O'Burton or maybe to a lesser degree like a Dexter Jackson, something like that. So I absolutely think they would be winning pro shows, um, especially that body archetype, like running back, the hyper athletic linebacker, where they're somewhere in the 5'9" to 6'1" range and they're just like a jacked 220 or something because they have to be fast. That would make for a really big, structured, imposing bodybuilder if that's what they had chose to do. So I love this question. It's not some super informative for the audience, but I just thought this was cool because I have thought of this many times myself. Um, this guy writes in, just competed in my first show, July 26th. I completely botched my rebound, 8 week time frame, and this past 2 weeks have been all over the place due to a move. When life gets all over the place, what's the best way to get dialed back in? Mentally beating myself up, but cannot do anything about lost time. Is the time lost hurtful, or can we still make great progress during this 20-week push? Um, Okay, let me just dissect this like a little by little. There's a lot there. So, completely botched your first rebound after your first show. Did the exact same thing. I can remember the first show that I ever did. Um, Obviously it was a Saturday. I left on a family vacation the next morning. I came back 8 days later and I was like 46 or something, 46 or 48 pounds heavier than what I was on stage. So definitely don't do that. I think if you did less damage than that, you're probably all right. Um, Now, the way that he worded this, botched my rebound. When I hear rebound post show, I assume that guys that are enhanced are leaving a pretty sizable cycle in relative to what they're used to or what they were doing for the show. Because typically the guys that just come down to like TRT or mostly remove all of the PEDs, they will say it's a recovery phase post show or a health phase or a cruise. So when I hear rebound, I assume that you were doing that pushing gear. Um, Now, if you like botched it and went off the rails with your diet, also while on gear, yeah, you missed an enormous opportunity and probably exposed yourself to some less than ideal health outcomes. Being on cycle along with being terrible on a diet is a bad combination for your health and for your blood work. Um, Now, I will say this just for context for everybody listening. This guy, this was his first show, but he has gotten a little bit of a later start into bodybuilding. I think he's somewhere in his mid to later 20s, maybe 25 to 28, somewhere in that range. I did my first show at 21. So, and that was 2014. So I did that without a coach. At the time I wasn't on any social media. Facebook was around. I wasn't on it. Um, I don't remember if Instagram had started then yet or not. Either way, I wasn't on it. YouTube was around, but I wasn't really on there either. And regardless, none of the social media platforms were used the way that they are today in terms of especially bodybuilding or fitness information. They weren't used as platforms to share information or educate within this bodybuilding space. So again, no coach, nowhere really to find useful information. I was just winging it on my own. Um, I luckily just intuitively knew to like pretty much come off all the drugs except like a cruise level of test. Um, so with that said, like, a little bit later start for bodybuilding. Um, sounds like you probably left the cycle in. This guy did have a coach. He even spoke to me about hiring me to work with him during his rebound. Sounds like that probably would have been a way better move than whatever he did here. um, So it's and besides even the coaching aspect, my point in saying all the things about social media, there's so much free information. I've talked, even if you're just talking about one no-name person, I've talked extensively about the different ways and what I think are the best practices for post-show rebound. So if this is somebody that watches my stuff, I've laid it out for you. I've had different people on the podcast that have given different perspectives. Austin has given different perspectives. Tommy Styles has given his own perspectives on it. I've talked to Chris Tuttle about it. I've talked to John Jewett. I've talked to Dusty Hanshaw. I've talked to Ron Partlow. I've talked to so many different guys on the podcast for other people to pull information from. Um, so I can't necessarily I wouldn't say you should beat yourself up because it's done and over with, but also I can't necessarily rationalize it for you. Um, So the rebound was botched, whatever that means. There's really no other further context. And then the last 2 weeks have been all over due to a move. I mean, I think that's just kind of a cop out, or that's kind of an excuse. I recently moved myself, didn't miss a single meal, didn't eat off plan, didn't miss a meal. I've talked about this before in a situation like that. Yeah, maybe you take a couple extra rest days because you just can't fit the gym into your schedule, or it's impractical to go to the gym when you have like a big task, like a move, and you're packing and unpacking. But there's never any excuse to miss meals or really even eat off plan. Um, like if you're a competitive bodybuilder and this is what you've signed up for, and you've made like the long-term commitment to say that I'm going, not only like am I just going to do one show and then I'm done with it, like I'm going to be a competitive bodybuilder and I'm going to pursue this, like then act like it. You don't just get to be handed the moniker or the title of bodybuilder without actually fulfilling the actions that real bodybuilders do. Real bodybuilders don't miss. Um, and I get messages like this all the time, or you see people on social media that portray themselves as competitive bodybuilders, and then they go missing for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then they make the post where they're like, just getting back into it, life happens, but I'm not going to get down on myself. And it's like, I just have always rolled my eyes and felt like that was such an excuse. Like I can't relate. Other than a handful of surgeries that I've had, I've never let life happen. I've always trained and done bodybuilding through whatever was going on in my life, breakups, deaths in my immediate family that completely ruined my mental health and perception on life. Um, Lost or quit jobs, trying to find new jobs, moves, moving across the country, moving back, um, other family turmoil, all different things. I always just was bodybuilding through that. Bodybuilding was like my anchor or my North Star that got me through everything. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not the best person for this. Um, but I just can't relate. Like other than I've had a handful of surgeries that I flat out could not physically get to the gym, and then even so, most of the time I got back to the gym sooner than what they told me. I was doing whatever I could. I was walking, staying on my diet. I was, you know, doing stuff with bands because I couldn't even do like cables or machines. This has just always been a priority to me, and anyone that has ever been around me in my real life, without question, could see that because of my actions. So I wouldn't mentally beat yourself up, but also I would very quickly pick yourself up by your bootstraps and lock in. Because if you're serious about this and you want to tell people and post and reap the rewards of calling yourself a bodybuilder, then you need to start acting like it. In terms of the last question, is the time lost hurtful, or can we still make great progress during the 20-week push? Was the time lost hurtful? Yeah, that was the most, that was the best opportunity to make a big leap in progress that you're going to have until you compete again. Um, the 6 to 12 weeks after a show, and if you got in really good shape, this guy was in pretty decent shape for his first, considering it was his first show. There was absolutely room to get 6 or 8 really stellar weeks of new muscle tissue and growth had he been on it. And so, yeah, the time lost is absolutely hurtful. I've talked about it like for the competitive bodybuilder that lives the lifestyle all year. I would say anywhere from 60 to 80% of the new progress that a guy makes in 1 year is in the immediate period after a show. Like you do a post show rebound, say 10 weeks, you make tons of progress, level up, get way up to a new body weight, and it still looks awesome. And then you cruise and get healthy or whatever the case is. And then you do an off season, and at that point, the progress is very slow. That's why I would say the majority of the progress that you can make, like in one calendar year, is that time immediately post show. Um, this guy also sent me some pictures, and so he's not. I wouldn't have even said necessarily that he just by looking at him, he has a better idea of what his actions were, but I wouldn't have said that he like totally blew his rebound because he wasn't like normal person fat. Um, but he has a look about him that's already like deep off season. And so, if you want my honest opinion, you don't have a ton of room. Like you're talking about a 20-week push. If it was me, I would spend the next 6 to 8 weeks dieting hard, really hard. Forget the gear, leave the gear out and stay on a cruise. I would use lipolytics, clen, thyroid, SLU, retatrutide, and I would diet my ass off to the point that it doesn't matter if I'm losing fullness or losing training performance. You need to try and reset yourself to be in a point where your body is able to accept food and you're going to be productive when you do try to grow and push food and push gear. Um, so from where you are and from how the things that you did to set up this point, if you're just going to go into a 20-week push now where you start using gear and try eating in a calorie surplus, I would say that there's a very good chance that there's not going to be tons of muscle gain, and you're going to look, at least from a competitive bodybuilding standpoint, pretty unacceptably fat. So that is just my perspective on it. And again, very, very nice kid. This kid I've talked to this kid personally. Um, but that is also, I think, people come to me because I'm honest. And also, I'm not putting this guy on blast because I didn't say his name and no one knows who I'm talking about, but he'll hear this and he'll know like that was just an honest perspective. What do I do if my girlfriend doesn't support my pursuit of bodybuilding? It's my absolute passion. I want to make a life of it. She is completely against the use of gear or any PEDs. And for context, this is like a young guy too. I would say from his pictures, he looks like he's like, I don't know, anywhere from 18 to 21 or something like that. Um, you replace her. This is just not the right person for you. If bodybuilding means this much to you and just in general, this lifestyle is, you found your passion in life. There's so many people that the majority of people in everyday life go through their day after day, month after month, year after year, and they have nothing that they live for. They work so that they can go out on the weekends and, afford material items. They're not passionate about anything. I am grateful and I feel lucky every single day for the last 15 years that I have something that I inherently care about, like deep in my fucking soul. I love this and care about it, and it wakes me up every day. So if you are lucky enough to be granted that and you love this and like you just can't picture yourself doing anything else. And yeah, for the most part, especially as a young guy, you're going to have to go to school or you're going to have to get a job or whatever the case is to pay the bills and to pay for bodybuilding. Um, but like you just can't, it's all you think about. You're at work all day and you can't wait to go train or whatever the case is. Man, this is like, it's a gift to have a passion like this. So, you know, especially as a very, very young man, this is just not the right person for you. You can very easily find someone else along the way that is going to feel the same way that you do about this lifestyle. It may take some time, but being alone or spending some time by yourself is so much better than being with the wrong person. Please take my word for it. Um, and I can tell you this, even if it takes years, even if you're a young guy, even if you look up and you're 27 years old and you still feel like you haven't found the right person, it will happen. And when it does, it will be worth the wait. But the worst thing that you can do is settle for someone that makes you feel guilty about enjoying or loving the things that you do. Um, or settling for someone that makes you feel like you have to be a lesser version of yourself to make it work with them. That's the wrong person, just point blank. I got a question in regards to your meals. Do you put attention to your meal prep and how your meals taste, or you simply go with the flow? Do you incorporate any spices and herbs? I'm probably like somewhere in the middle from like the two ends of the spectrum. I'm not just like boiling up chicken and eating plain rice, where it's just like completely bland, like Roman Fritz style. But I'm also not like making every meal as like a gourmet meal. Um, Kelsey, my fiance, does most of the cooking. And so she will just like bulk cook chicken, beef, plain, no seasonings or anything. We make fresh rice daily, which I think is enormous. I think if you are eating like stored or leftover rice, you're asking for digestive issues. So we make fresh rice every day. And I use salt and I use like zero sugar and zero or low calorie condiments. Now, the overall theme of your question, I'll answer it like this. I enjoy all my food. I make it so that I enjoy all my food. Um, the years of me just like choking down bland food in the name of being a hardcore bodybuilder are long, long gone. If you want to do this with any staying power or sustainability, you have to enjoy your food. It's like I've said this on like previous videos. Being a competitive bodybuilder that's like all in all the time, you're like a professional eater. Your main job is to eat. And so you have to enjoy your food. A big part of like digestion and appetite are also how much you enjoy or look forward to your food. Like if your food sucks and you know it, like you're gonna have a hard time eating all of it. And I used to, so I do it that way more so with like, condiments that agree with me and that I enjoy more so than spices and herbs because I used to do exclusively like spices and seasonings on my food. And that eventually led to some pretty bad digestive stomach issues. A lot of seasonings and different things have some combination of garlic or onion in it, and if you're putting that on all your chicken and you eat 2 pounds of cooked chicken a day, like eventually you're going to run into some issues. So that was the case for me. You've talked about gaining muscle quickly and it negatively impacting your midsection. Do you plan to slow that down or hold your current size in place so as to not further compromise your chance of doing well on stage? That's a good question. And it's a logical thought process, being that I do compete on stage and I have talked about putting on muscle so quickly that I do think that it made my midsection look worse. We've heard different bodybuilders talk about like the bigger you get, it wasn't their favorite look or it wasn't their best stage look. I've heard Fuad talk about it. I've heard Jordan Peters talk about it. I don't think mine is so bad that I'm at this level where it's like my look or my midsection is ruined. But I have no plans on slowing it down. I'm pursuing it. I'm pursuing size as aggressively as I ever have. And I'm, for the first time, doing that while also simultaneously being more mindful and proactive about my midsection and controlling what I can in order to make it look good. I do daily vacuums, planks. I'm only eating foods that agree with me. Like, in years past when I was started really trying to put on a lot of size and eating a lot of food, there are periods where I had like terrible gut issues. I don't have any gut issues anymore. My gut is perfect. Like I said, doing the daily vacuums, planks. I wear a waist trainer in a lot of my free time, like during cardio, when I'm outside doing walks, even just as I'm eating a meal, because a meal is going to expand your midsection. So there's things that I'm doing to try to be proactive about it. But at the end of the day, I got into this to be enormous. So, if I had to choose one or the other, like choosing to not get bigger, but make my midsection look better so I can do better on stage, or getting bigger than I've ever been, and it comes at the cost of my midsection looking a little worse, and maybe I don't place as well at shows, I am choosing the size. Um, my long-term vision for myself is more so a personal desire and vision, more so than it is in the eyes of a judging panel. So there's a certain way that I want to look, and if that look comes with what a judging panel deems is a less than desirable midsection, well, then so be it. Like, I'm bodybuilding for me. I'm not bodybuilding for a panel of judges. And so, number one thing I can remember, literally like day one or even before I actually stepped foot in a gym for the first time, and I had just started to consider the idea of wanting to be bigger or wanting to be a bodybuilder. The whole idea was to just be as big as possible, just to be enormous. Literally, I think the first thing I remember telling my mom, she was like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "I want to walk through the mall in a t-shirt and have people like turn and look and be like, wow, that's a bodybuilder. That's what a bodybuilder looks like." So yeah, no plans on slowing down at all. I fully intend on getting to at least 290 this year, so that it results in being 245-ish on stage the next time I compete. So like 20 pounds up from where I was this most recent show, however long that takes me. Um, but yeah, no plans on slowing down at all. Definitely want to be more mindful if I can, and um, I'm pretty determined to do both. Like bring a new level of size the next time I compete, while also improving how my midsection looks, which should result in a pretty dangerous stage look. But you know, to the point of the question, like if I get there and I compete next year at 245 in the same like stellar conditioning that I was in at this past show, and my midsection got a little worse or doesn't look super desirable, well then so be it. Have you had a consultation with a surgeon yet? And if so, what was the outcome? Are you really planning on doing this surgery? So for anybody that's watching that is not familiar, um, I experimented in my most recent post-show rebound with some high dose growth hormone. I did about 5 weeks of 20 IUs per day, and it eventually resulted in me having permanent, like clinical carpal tunnel, especially in my left hand. My The three fingers that the carpal tunnel are responsible for are your thumb, pointer, and middle finger. And these, including like the fat part of my palm and all of this, so this just whole side of my hand, are just completely numb all the time. I can move it, but the way I describe it is if like you told me to like pick a number out of a hat, and I just like put my hand in there and tried to grab something, I wouldn't be able to tell by feeling if I was holding something or not. My right hand is not nearly as bad. I just have like a buzzing, tingling, especially in the fingertips of those three fingers. And then during sleep, the outside two fingers also kind of bother me and become uh, numb or have like a pins and needles feeling. So yeah, so I spoke to some different people, spoke to Roman Fritz. He got this surgery himself. It's called a carpal tunnel release surgery. So last week I went to a consultation with a board certified hand surgeon. Um, Met with a few of his like colleagues and him. They put me through some different tests, squeezing different points, telling me to move different things, tell me if, ask me if I feel things at a certain point. They've determined that it's definitely at minimum like clinical carpal tunnel in both hands. And then so tomorrow, actually, today is Monday, Tuesday, I go for an EMG nerve test. And so that is going to determine whether it's just carpal tunnel or if the ulnar nerve, which attaches back here to the elbow and is responsible for these outside two fingers, that nerve test will determine if that also needs surgery. So when I went in, I told everybody in the process, I'm a competitive bodybuilder. This has come on because of both the rapid weight gain and loss that I go through when I compete and then bulk back up, and because I used and continue to use like an abusive level of human growth hormone. And so the actual surgeon himself heard all this, walked me through some of these like subjective tests. And he told me that if this nerve test determines that it's just carpal tunnel, so it's just these three fingers and it's just a release here that they go in and release the tunnel itself. Um, his words exactly were, we will have you. He was like, the good news is we can fix it. If it's just carpal tunnel, we'll have you back to using your stuff and lifting heavy weights in 2 weeks. Um, so fingers crossed, numb fingers crossed on that one. If the elbow needs surgery as well, it could be up to 6 weeks. He said anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So that is tomorrow. I go for a follow up with the surgeon based on the results of this nerve test early November, and then hopefully have surgery, you know, mid to late November, and then ideally start my off season early December, like December 1st, because Kels and I go on vacation at the end of November. We go on vacation for Thanksgiving, just the two of us. So yeah, that's where that is. Will high dose GH help with loose skin? No, I'm sorry to say, but it won't. Um, I even have done some pretty extensive lab rat research with GHK copper peptide in some pretty high doses for extended periods of time. That is the one that is supposed to be able to improve skin elasticity, improve skin tone and look in general, improve hair, all these different things. I truthfully noticed nothing from it at all. Suggestions to lower systolic blood pressure. I'm on 80 milligrams of telmisartan, 25 hydrochlorothiazide, 10 Nebuvol, and still 130 over 58. That is like not like if we're talking about even for the average American, never mind somebody that's like enhanced or pursuing bodybuilding, that is not a blood pressure that's like remotely concerning at all. Um, I'm not a doctor. I'm not. This is for entertainment purposes only. I'll give you my 2 cents on this. I would keep the telmisartan in. I would make sure that you're taking the telmisartan before bed. I would drop the hydrochlorothiazide unless you're on an outrageous amount of growth hormone. When I say outrageous, I mean anything from 14 IUs every day or more. If that's not you, I would drop that completely. You can keep the Nebuvol in. And what I would do is I would bring in 10 milligrams of lisinopril. I would also take that before bed. You can always work that up to 20 milligrams of lisinopril, and that will do the trick. What do you think of pre and post workout Nova Rapid use only on high days? So once every 5 days. Man, honestly, the longer that I do this, the more people that I talk to, um, and theories and ways of use that I am familiar with. I am just not a big fan of rapid insulins. When you think about how slow and how long of a process it is to build muscle, and how slow digestion is, I just am not sold on the idea that like controlled or improved blood sugar for a single meal is doing anything. Like, okay, this guy's doing this, say once a week for 2 meals once a week. Like, okay, eat 40 something meals a week. Like, do you think the heightened, super compensation effect of 2 meals is going to make a physical difference on your body? Like, you're going to be able to see a difference in the muscle tissue that your body has created from these 2 meals with a rapid insulin? I do not. This is why I so prefer Lantus. I would much rather have a super compensation effect, higher binding affinity, um, greater synergies with IGF. I would rather have my blood sugar in an awesome spot for all my meals instead of 1 meal or 2 meals. What are some hills that you're willing to die on regarding controversial opinions in bodybuilding? Hills that I'm willing to die on. I think in a contest prep for enhanced competitive bodybuilders, fasted cardio is an absolute must. I think I think when you're trying to grow in an off season, you probably require more rest days than you would during contest prep. So like tons of guys have made incredible off-season progress training 4 days a week. And then I think that you can up your total output and lower the volume per session by then going to 5 days a week in a contest prep. So in general, I just think rest is more important in an off-season setting when you're trying to grow more tissue or new tissue. I think for advanced, enhanced competitors that have been doing this for a long time, training to failure for at least part of your session or some sets of your session are absolutely needed to put on new muscle tissue. I think that eating in a pretty substantial calorie surplus, if you're enhanced and trying to put on new muscle tissue, is an absolute must. I think that this idea that you can just eat at maintenance and get really big, like way bigger than you've ever been, is fucking just silly. It's so silly. I'm sure there's a million others. I didn't put much thought into this. Um, what are your highest ever doses and how do they compare to others? Highest ever doses. I mean, I did the 20 IU of GH experience. Um, not just hearsay. I know people that have done much more and then they go on podcasts and lie about it. um, or just downplay the total. Maybe lying isn't the best word, but um, and then I legitimately know guys that are really good, better than I'll ever be, that take less GH wise. Same thing with the gear. So I don't know. I mean, I've used a lot of shit. I will continue to use a lot of shit, but um, I've heard and seen firsthand of people using way more, both in terms of anabolics and GH. And I know plenty of people that are awesome and look incredible, look better than I'll ever look, and they legitimately use less than me. So I guess I'd land somewhere in the middle. Is volume king, like all the RP guys say? This person is trying to, this person asking this, especially the way they worded it, they're trying to get me to say something controversial that people are going to get mad about. I would just say, like I have before, I would only take advice from people that you want to look like. I'm going to leave it at that. Is volume king? No, I don't think volume is king. I have done it all. And at this point, especially because I've recently just tried like very high volume, higher volume than I've ever done before. I think all training works, especially if guys are on drugs, and especially if guys have good genetics, especially if guys eat in a surplus, you're going to build muscle. Um, I think for most people and in most scenarios, the intensity and effort of the training is going to matter more than how much you do. So basically, I think the quality of your training, the quality of the sets, the quality of each individual rep, I think matters a lot more than just an arbitrary number of sets. I've had workouts that I've done 30 sets for a body part. and I come away from it with decent pump. I kind of feel like I wasn't even like super focused or super in tune with most of the sets. It felt like a chore. Um, I continued that for weeks on end. That body part didn't particularly, didn't grow or didn't blow me away with anything. And then I go back to like a more moderate style where I'm really locked in for every single set because I'm trying to get the most out of the least. And I'm making not only each set, but each rep just really quality. I think one under discussed aspect of training, and I've heard Jay Cutler say this, but I think the quality of your contractions and how hard you are able to contract a muscle is one of the most underrated aspects of training. So often, talk to anyone that trains, talk to any bodybuilder or whatever. So often, people will report that the muscle that is most developed on their physique is the body part that they get the best pumps in. And that is because their ability to contract that muscle really hard is highest. So that's, going back, that's probably a hill that I'm willing to die on. I think the ability to contract a muscle really hard and the quality of your contractions are way more important than just the arbitrary number of sets that you do. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I think it's time for me to eat, actually. So that's everything for now, guys. Thanks for following along. Thanks for watching, especially if you made it through the whole video. Like I said, if you have any suggestions or things that you would like to see outside of the weekly Q&A and the podcast, let me know. And until next time, I am out.